December 11th, 1317, the Nyköping Banquet happened in Nyköping Castle in Sweden, and the main reason we know about this is the Erik Chronicle. There once was a king named Magnus Ladulås who died in the year 1290 AD. He left behind 3 sons, Birger, Erik, and Waldemar. Birger was the one who was in line to inherit the throne. He was 10 years old at the time. He had a regent until he reached the Age of Understanding. But the thing is, classic sibling rivalry in royal families. Those 2 brothers never saw eye to eye with him about which one should inherit the throne. So the king one day decided to invite his 2 brothers to his castle, Nyköping, for a banquet. And I'm sure you know pretty much where this is going. The brothers were imprisoned. It is believed that they starved to death in the dungeons of Nyköping Castle, which you can see here in the photograph. December 11th, 1520, Martin Luther and the Reformation, love him or hate him. This is not the day that he published his 95 Thesis. That was 3 years before this on Halloween. Since then, the Pope had written a rebuttal to the 95 Thesis. That was Pope Leo X. He published what's called a papal bull. The title of that was Exsurge Domine in Latin, or Arise, O Lord in English, argued against Luther's teachings and threatened him and his compatriots with excommunication unless they recant. And if you've been reading Martyr's Mirror, you will know that this is an astoundingly light threat. Usually it's execution with a sword and then seize all their property for the benefit of the local duke. However, if Luther had not been excommunicated before, well, he certainly was on his way there, because December 11th of 1520 was the day when he burned his copy of that papal bull, the essay written by the Pope, right in public in front of the city gates of Wittenberg. December 11th, 1652, however, I will footnote that date. Different dating conventions put this battle on an actual different date. However, this is arguably the day that the Battle of Dungeness happened. This is in the Cape of Dungeness, that is in Kent, England, and this is part of the First Anglo-Dutch War. England soon after this would be famous for its navy, however, not yet, because this ended up being a historic naval defeat for England. In this battle, 5 of England's ships were lost, that would be 2 captured and 3 sunk, compared to just 1 of the Dutch ships, and that one was an accidental explosion. So the English couldn't even take credit for that. In fact, this is the battle that causes the Commonwealth of England to rethink the way they do its navy. And this reworking of the navy set the stage for a lot of British involvement in North America and Australia over the next 2 centuries. December 11th, 1768, the first edition of Encyclopedia Britannica is published. This would go on to be the world's most popular encyclopedia for hundreds of years. It would be as comprehensive as could be made reference book for the sum of all human knowledge up to that point. School students would be using these for research projects for many, many, many years to come. December 11th, 1799. The French Revolution is famous for the guillotine, but have you ever looked into some of the off-the-wall ideas they had for reforming society? Things having to do with modernizing the country and bringing everyone into a scientific understanding of the world. At least in theory. They had such gems as the metric calendar, which attempted to divide the year, 365 days, into units of 10. They also had metric time. But although metric time was obviously a very silly notion, the metric unit of distance was a less silly notion, because this was the day that France adopted the meter as its official unit of measure. And to this day, almost the entire world uses the meter primarily for a unit of distance. December 10th, 1817, the state of Mississippi officially becomes part of the Union. It attains statehood, it becomes one of the United States of America, a state whose name will be used as a unit of timekeeping for elementary school students across the country. December 10th, 1861, on this day, the Confederate States of America officially accept Kentucky into their ranks as the 12th state of the Confederacy. Now, here's the part that's less often thought about. During the Civil War, Kentucky had rival state governments. So there was the old state government that was Union-aligned, and then there was the state government that assembled and declared Kentucky to be a Confederate state. So what happens from a government procedure standpoint when a state secedes and declares revolution? It can be a bit of a mess. But at the end of the war, of course, the Union-aligned government was the one that lasted. December 10th, 1864, Sherman's March to the Sea. William T. Sherman, of course, later on in the American Civil War, launched a very destructive, literal scorched earth campaign across the southern states on his way to, where else, the sea. The plan was for him to cross the Confederacy one end to the other and wreak havoc along the way, which was largely successful. And on this day, December 10th, this is the day he reached Savannah, Georgia. December 10th, 1877, the Siege of Plevna comes to its completion. This is part of the Russo-Turkish War of 1877 and 78. The gist of that war is the Russian Empire lost some land in the Crimean War a couple decades earlier. The Russian monarchy did not like that, so they ended up in a war with the Ottoman Empire. Now, I'm simplifying that. It was also partially a coalition war. Constantinople was involved, and the war was largely successful for the Russian coalition side. That partially stemmed from this Siege of Plevna, which wrapped up on December 10th. This was a big victory for the Russians. That city had been under siege for almost 5 months, and 25,000 Turkish soldiers surrendered as a result of this siege.
December 10th, 1896, this is the date of death for Alfred Nobel. He is the inventor of dynamite. He's also the person that the Nobel Peace Prize is named after. Every year for over 100 years, the Nobel Prize Committee has awarded special prizes to outstanding individuals around the world. December 10th, 1896, a play called Ubu Roi premieres in Paris. This was written by 23-year-old Alfred Jarry, and the play is so obscene that it prompts a riot at the end of it, which, if you know anything about Paris, the people of Paris rioting over obscenity is an achievement. The play parodied elements of Macbeth, and people say that this play ushered in a new artistic era with regards to storytelling and stage acting. December 10th, 1898, the Treaty of Paris ends the Spanish-American War. Spain concedes that the U.S. will take over administration of Cuba. That turned out well. And the U.S. also purchased the Philippines from Spain for $20 million as part of this treaty. Remember the Maine. December 10th, 1902, the opening of the Aswan Dam reservoir on the Nile River in Egypt. The Aswan Dam was built between 1899 and 1902. It was built during the British occupation of Egypt, and its location was around the first cataract of the Nile, for those of you who know what that is. And the main reason for this being built was for better control of floodwaters and irrigation downstream. December 10th, 1906, President Theodore Roosevelt of the United States is awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his role in mediating peace talks between Russia and Japan to end their war. He is the first American to win a Nobel Peace Prize, but he would be far from the last U.S. president to win that prize.
December 10th, 1907, the Brown Dog Riots in London. So called because these riots centered around a statue of a brown dog. Hold on to your hats, this one's gonna be a wild ride. These riots were done by medical students at the University of London, over 1,000 of them, and their studies were being threatened by public outcry against animal experimentation in medicine. Well, this moral question caught national attention. Courts all over the country were brought in. Swedish feminists were known for infiltrating lectures at the medical school for the purpose of disrupting those events. And of course, a famous virtue signal is this, a statue of a brown dog in 1906 to commemorate the animals who were mistreated in medical experiments. The statue was torn down in 1910, and a replica was much later put up in its place. Well, December 10th, this day, was the worst day of the riots. 400 police and over 1,000 students were involved. Man, I just wanted to play video games. I mean study medicine. December 10th, 1920, this is the date of death for Horace Dodge. He is one of the two famous Dodge brothers, co-founders of the Dodge Motor Company. Horace's older brother John died of influenza earlier that year in January of 1920. And this was shortly after Henry Ford of the Ford Motor Company bought out the Dodge brothers. So the Dodge Motor Company became a holding of the Ford Motor Company. So after the older brother died, the younger one also contracted influenza. Horace lingered on for quite a while with the disease, had multiple complications related to that disease, including pneumonia, among other things. But on December 10th, at the age of 52, his pain was no more. These brothers actually have a family mausoleum in the Egyptian style in the Woodlawn Cemetery of Detroit, Michigan. You can see that photograph here. That is where they are both laid to rest. December 10th, 1941, World War II. This is within a week of the Japanese attacking Pearl Harbor. Two British ships, the HMS Prince of Wales, which you can see here, and the HMS Repulse, are sunk by Japanese bombers in the Pacific region. This comes in the midst of Imperial Japan taking a lot of surprising and aggressive moves against American interests and other targets all over the Pacific. If we didn't know which side they support in the European War, we certainly do now. December 10th, 1941, the death of Colin Kelly. He is remembered as one of the first American heroes of the Second World War. He was a bomber pilot, and he did indeed die in the cockpit. Within a week of the attack on Pearl Harbor, he was doing bombing runs against the Japanese, piloting a B-17 Flying Fortress. The plane got hit, and this man ordered the rest of the flight crew to bail out of the plane. Parachute jumped to safety while he stayed in the cockpit at the controls trying to stabilize the vehicle. However, the plane did end up exploding and he died in the explosion. December 10th, 1941, the same day that those two British ships were sunk, this is General Masaharu Homma. He is part of the Imperial Japanese military, and on this day his invasion force lands in Luzon in the Philippines, and thus begins the Japanese conquest of the Philippines. December 10th, 1942, World War II, Rejczynski's note. This photograph is Mr. Edward Rejczynski. He is the foreign minister of the Polish government in exile, so that is after Poland got conquered by the Germans. The note itself is a message he sent to several of the Allied countries in Europe. This note describes German efforts to exterminate the Jews in Poland, and he lists several locations by name as places where they have camps where they are doing this. December 10th, 1948, the Human Rights Convention is signed by the United Nations. Document is the treaty which binds the UN member states. For several decades, this treaty and its enforcement was governed by the UN Commission on Human Rights, but more recently in 2006 was replaced by the UN Human Rights Council. December 10th, 1949, the Chinese Civil War. On this day, the People's Liberation Army, that is the military for what would be known as the Chinese Communist Party, and the modern Chinese government that sprang out of that, they arrive at the city of Chengdu and begin attempting to take it. This is the last city in mainland China that is held by the Republic of China, that government, the one which is currently recognized as the government of Taiwan. And with the fall of this city, Chiang Kai-shek, the president, and the last of the government officials are forced to flee mainland China and take up residence on the island. December 10th, 1953, on this day, Winston Churchill, Prime Minister of the UK, is awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature. Most people know him as the leader of Britain during World War II, famous for his Fight Them on the Beaches, Never Surrender speech. Fewer people know that he did a lot of writing. Most of it was nonfiction. He has an autobiography, he has biographies of his father and some of his older ancestors, various other books as well, dealing mostly with history, and for those books he was recognized by the Nobel Prize Board. December 10th, 1968, the 300 million yen robbery. This happened in Japan. It is the single largest bank heist in Japanese history. A man dressed up and posing as a police officer stopped bank employees and got away with 294 million yen. But it just sounds better if we make it a round number. And fun fact, this bank heist remains unresolved to this day. We do not know who did it. December 10th, 1988, this is the date of death for Dorothy de Rothschild. She married into the Rothschild banking family. She was known as a philanthropist and an activist for Jewish affairs. She passed away at the age of 93. December 10th, 2003, this is the date of death for Sean McClory. He was an Irish actor and he had a very long film career spanning from the 40s all the way to the 90s. December 10th, 2006, this was the date of death for Augusto Pinochet. He was military dictator of the nation of Chile. He was the longest reigning ruler of the nation of Chile. And if you've ever heard jokes about free helicopter rides for communists, this was the guy that did the helicopters.